You know, when people first hear about the Marine Corps chain of command, they might think it's just one straight line. But actually, there are two parallel chains, service and operational. It sounds simple, but it can get a bit confusing.
I've definitely seen that trip people up. The service chain starts at the top with the president, then runs through the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of the Navy, and the Commandant of the Marine Corps. But the operational chain is a little different. It goes from the President and Secretary of Defense straight to the commanders of combatant commands for missions and forces.
Exactly, and what's interesting is how Marine Corps component commanders provide the operational forces to those combatant commanders as needed. So, you get this dual system, one for maintaining the Corps as an organization, and another for actually getting the job done in theaters around the world.
That division really keeps things organized, even if it looks complicated from the outside. Having both chains allows the Marine Corps to both function as a branch of the Navy and respond directly to changing mission needs on the ground.
Now, focusing in on some of the key leaders like the Secretary of the Navy and the Commandant, what really stands out to me is just how much authority the Secretary has over all Navy and Marine Corps affairs. We're talking recruiting, equipping, training, you name it.
Yeah, and the Commandant is right up there too, as the highest-ranking officer in the Marine Corps. But what's surprising is that, despite being a Joint Chief, the Commandant doesn't actually have operational command authority. Instead, they focus on readiness, organization, and advising the President. It's a unique setup.
Definitely. Then you have Marine forces themselves, like the MAR-4 units, security forces at naval bases, and those Marine detachments at embassies around the world. They get assigned to combatant commands based on the mission, with a lot of coordination behind the scenes.
That system of shifting forces around is what lets the Marines respond so quickly to crises. It's kind of like having a toolbox where you can send out exactly the right tool for the job, wherever it's needed most. And speaking of people who keep things running, that leads us to the senior enlisted roles.
Let's talk about the backbone of the unit, the senior enlisted folks. The sergeant major's role goes way beyond just discipline. They're involved in morale, advising on policy, and helping guide both SNCCOs and junior enlisted. They're basically the commander's right hand when it comes to enlisted matters.
Absolutely, and it's similar with the Command Master Chief on the Navy side. They're advising commanders, making sure Navy enlisted issues get the attention they deserve. One thing I've always admired is how they act as a bridge, not just between leaders and enlisted, but between different branches working together.
I remember a deployment where the sergeant major personally welcomed every new arrival and made sure folks knew the standards. That kind of leadership can make a huge difference, especially in a high-stress environment.
And it pays off in the long run, maintaining morale, enforcing standards, and just being that steady presence. But once you have your people in place, you need the right structure and equipment, which brings us to the tables of organization and equipment.
So, shifting gears a bit, the table of organization, TO, and table of equipment, TE, are those documents that spell out what a unit looks like on paper, right? Who's authorized, what gear you have, and so on.
Exactly. The TO lays out all the personnel, how many people, what ranks, all lined up for each unit. The TE does the same for equipment. It tells you what vehicles, radios, or even coffee pots your unit is supposed to have. It's the blueprint for organizing a combat-ready force.
And then there's the training allowance, which is kind of a moving target since it depends on where you're assigned. Some commands get more gear to train with, some less, because their missions differ.
That's a great point, and it all ties into the Status of Resources and Training System, or SORTS, which keeps tabs on how ready a unit is tracking both people and equipment. Sometimes the paperwork feels endless, but it's the foundation for readiness.
SORTS is one of those behind-the-scenes systems few outside the military hear about, but without it, you'd have a hard time knowing who's actually ready to deploy. Speaking of keeping everything running, the staff sections are like the engine under the hood. The staff sections, those G1 through G7 jobs, are where all the coordination magic happens. Take G1, for example. They handle everything personnel related, from strength management to morale services. It's like HR on steroids.
Right. And then G2 covers intelligence, making sure commanders have the info they need about enemy capabilities or the terrain. G3 is operations, think training, plans, and actually executing the mission. Each staff section has its own web of responsibilities and special staff officers.
G4 is all about logistics if you need gear, food, or transportation. That's your go-to. G5 focuses on long-term planning, especially at higher commands, while G6 manages communications, keeping everyone connected. G7 handles inspections and safety, making sure units are ready and compliant.
And what's interesting is how each staff section has its own experts, like the chaplain for morale, the public affairs officer for media, or the judge advocate for legal issues. They all work together, constantly passing information and advice to help the command function.
Honestly, the amount of coordination is mind-blowing. But at the very center, there's the Chief of Staff, who keeps all these moving parts on track. Let's zoom in on the Chief of Staff for a minute. You could say this position is the command's nerve center directing staff, making sure the commander's intent is understood and keeping the whole organization synchronized.
That's a tough job, honestly. They're juggling everything from coordinating meetings to monitoring morale and ensuring plans actually get implemented. The Chief of Staff frees up the commander to focus on big-picture decisions and strategy.
And backing up the Chief of Staff are all those special staff members, like the chaplain, the public affairs officer, the surgeon, the comptroller, and the judge advocate. Each brings their expertise, whether it's spiritual care, media relations, legal advice, or financial management.
It's a real team effort. The thing is, even though the command structure can look like just a bunch of boxes and arrows, it's really people, leaders, experts, and professionals working together to keep the Marine Corps mission ready at all times.
And that's what makes the whole administrative fundamentals piece so fascinating. Once you start peeling back the layers, you see how every role and every section fits together to support the mission.